Hello there, and welcome to our program concerning doing international business across cultures. We are now going to take a look at doing business with counterparts from Germany. It could be that you are right now involved with some German companies, and it could be that you are making plans to travel to Germany to begin that process. Whatever it is, we're just going to go through the background on what makes German businessmen tick. Why do they do business the way that they do? And when you understand this, you're going to be able to approach business with your German counterparts in a more positive way, with full knowledge of why things happen the way they do. Let's take a look at a bit of background on Germany. And in recent years, we could say that the German way of doing business has become quite a prominent point of discussion within Germany itself, based on the fact that there has been a growing feeling amongst German politicians and business leaders that things have to radically change in the way that they have been doing business, let's say, since post-Second World War. Since that time, it was quite evident that the technical model of the way of doing business was the most prominent model that they followed, and that the economy was going to thrive based purely on the technical ability of the country. Well, that is true in itself. However, the way businesses are doing business has to now more than ever adapt to the realities of the way the modern world is doing business. And this is going to be quite a radical change for Germany. The post-war German success of becoming a strong economy and a technical model was achieved without too much attention being given to the science of business management, or the science of human management, we could say. And these sciences have been in vogue in the UK and indeed, of course, the USA for many, many, many decades. So Germany was very slow to follow with this. But Germany has come to the realization that a lot of this science of business management is very credible and is very real, and will have a greater impact on the way that their company can accelerate and build its economy for the future. Up until now, much greater attention has been paid to academic and to technical education, as I have said, and its value to business in general. Companies tend to be run by technical experts. This has been the norm for decades. And so to be an engineer, to be a technical expert, has been seen to be the way to go in business. This is the business model to follow. And rather than having lawyers or accountants or social workers or entrepreneurs running business, that hasn't been very important up until now. So in Germany, the engineering industry has high regard, absolutely. So anybody who has come from a technical background is always held in high esteem because of the nature of the country since post-Second World War and its desire to rebuild and become a strong economy. So we can say that diligence and competence are characteristics which are held in high esteem by our German colleagues and are seen as key indicators of performance. To be diligent, to be competent, that is very, very important. That's what makes things run. In a nutshell, those sorts of capabilities are what is needed to make sure that companies profit and companies succeed. However, unlike the UK or the US, German companies have not really used appraisal systems based on the softer competencies or the softer skills, and therefore appraisal systems as such are not really common in traditional German companies, as they are in the US or the UK, for example, or even indeed Australia. So it's very much a hard-handed approach, a very pragmatic approach to having the ability, the technical skills and the diligence and the technical ability to produce results. This has been the theme throughout Germany post-Second World War. And as it is now being recognised, as I said, by politicians and senior business leaders, that this current social model has to change to get into step with the modern world if Germany is going to move forward and do business indeed in the European Union or globally. So now we begin to understand the mentality of your German counterparts, the mentality of people and why they think the way they do, why they do things, why they structure their organizations the way they do. It's based on their background since the Second World War. It's based on all the things that have happened to them since the post-Cold War integration and the economic hardships that Germany has encountered along the way. This gives us a good knowledge and a good background of how to view German partners and our German counterparts. So here we will take a look now at the business structures. Most of the power in German companies is really in the hands of a few senior managers. The power is all with them. Larger companies have a supervisory board which appoints the management board. And the management board is the final decision maker on policy which affects management. So the management board is very much a key player in the running of a business in Germany. If you are a member of a management board, you are actually running the company. The members of the management board all have equal responsibility for the overall management of the organization. And somehow that means that the chairman of the company has less power, less personal power than in some other countries. Management is very collegiate in this management board. The management at the top share the responsibility, share the total running of the company. So we see here that the chairman is not really the top person here in terms of managing the company. Below the management board, companies tend to have a very strict and very hierarchical approach, and every individual has specific roles and specific responsibilities, and these roles and responsibilities are very tightly defined and compartmentalized. This leaves no doubt as to what people are meant to be doing. It may seem very rigid, it may seem very methodical, but it is very well defined, and it's a very methodical approach to most business issues. And in this methodical approach, procedures and adherence to well-defined rules are respected. So there is a strong possible outcome for things to be done, because all the policies, all the procedures, all the steps are in their place very perfectly. It's very rigid, very methodical. There, in some ways, is no room for mistake if all the procedures are followed, etc. This is a very respected way of doing business in Germany. This is how things are done. And it certainly comes from the fact that engineering, technical attributes, technical adeptness is very much the key factor in the educational system of Germany since the Second World War. And therefore you see this very methodical approach to things being done. It has both good and bad points, as I have just explained. On the plus side, everybody knows what's expected, and that's a good thing. You don't have to question because it's so clearly written. Everything is well defined. There's no grey area. And everybody knows what they have to do in the process. to help them achieve their goals. And their goals are very clearly defined. There is no grey area, there is no uncertainty. Everything is stipulated to exactness, to preciseness of what has to be achieved. However, if we look at the other side of that, preciseness and exactness, if we look at the other side of that, a criticism that is often given or shown towards German industry and also at German business people is that they tend to be quite inflexible and slow to change to new situations. That's because they have always had these steps and procedures in place and a very methodical approach to doing things. So because that has worked, and it works well, it, however, does not allow German business to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more creative perhaps, a little bit more willing to change, to look for new opportunity and new ideas, because they are so entrenched in the system and the methodical approach to things. Their businesses are working very well. However, in the science of human management, in the science of people management and management in general, German business leaders they do understand that there is a need to be a little bit more flexible and look at the more modern way of doing business. So we see that the business structure is quite rigid, quite methodical. And we can understand when we do meet people from Germany indeed, and also from doing business with German companies. Everything is quite precise. I think you will understand that. Even the language itself is very precise. So this is reflected in the way that business is structured. So moving on from business structures and now looking at management styles. What do you think? If you have a business structure and that structure is quite rigid and methodical, even though it's working well, it's very, everything in its place, etc. How do you think this is going to impact the management style? Let's take a look. In Germany, managers are expected to be somewhat technically capable and to show strong and clear leadership. But they have to be technically capable as well. That is very important. And although disagreement may happen, it is quite rare to see that disagreement in public. But this doesn't mean that German executives are yes men, okay? That doesn't mean that they follow exactly what the boss says. Even though you may not see them arguing, they do have disagreement. Subordinates, they tend to respect the technical abilities of their superiors. And depending on what they think about the technical ability of their superiors, it will impact on their willingness to follow instructions. In other words, if they respect the boss because he's technically capable, he's a good specific technical operator, then they will do anything for him. If they think that you're not so technically adept, that your technical skills are lacking, then they're less inclined to follow you and respect you and do what you say. So here we have a very interesting situation. When less technically proficient non-Germans are asked to manage a team of Germans, the non-German can sometimes be seen as lacking the key prerequisite for developing the team's respect. So this means that Germans are very concerned about the technical qualifications and abilities of their leaders, of their bosses, of their superiors. Responsibility is expected to be delegated by the manager of the team to another person in the team to carry out a particular task. This is actually a normal thing. The technical manager will delegate responsibility or a particular task to another person of the team. That is expected. And of course, that person who is to do that task has to be technically competent to carry out that task as well. And it's a good thing, though, that the team member will then expect to be left to do that task without any interference or supervision. So instructions need to be clear, precise, and without any ambiguity. So it seems like the technical part of a person's role is very, very key. Managers will give jobs, will delegate. It is expected of them, and they don't baby their staff. They will not interfere with the tasks that staff is performing, because they have to be technically competent, absolutely, to be able to perform that task. Now, if you are from a culture where managers are expected to perhaps develop a little bit more of a closer relationship, a more intimate ambiance would develop between the two of you, you can see that somehow the German manager-subordinate relationship is quite distant and cold. If the manager just delegates a lot and delegates to a technical person who is technical, has technical competency and doesn't need any coaching along the way or any guiding along the way, then that somehow seems to be a little bit distant and cold. So this is how we view, or people tend to view, that manager-subordinate relationship in German companies. People are there, they have their qualification, they do their job, follow the system, the methodology, and it all works out okay. So, from your culture, if you are from a culture where you indeed value the interpersonal skills and the coaching style of management, and where you guide more than instruct, then it would seem somehow a little bit distant, this relationship between German manager and subordinate. And indeed, the management styles within German companies, the higher up the organisation people rise, the more a sense of dignity of the position becomes apparent. So prestige is added to that position as you are elevated up the ranks. A sense of dignity and importance becomes a very apparent thing. This is quite a visible thing. Socializing, therefore, tends to be at the peer group level rather than up and down the hierarchy. So we can see here that things are quite particular. Things are quite regulated. Things are quite in their place. The management styles are not as collaborative or collective or team-oriented as you might see in other countries. This is where we can begin to understand how problems arise when you're trying to work with a team from a German company, where you're trying to integrate a system with your German counterparts, etc. So beginning to understand the basics of the business structures, why they are the way they are, and the management styles which come from the structures that have been in place for decades, you will begin to understand more as to how you can find that common ground, where your management style is quite different to the management style of your counterparts. Knowing what differences there are in the styles can help you go a long way to solving the problems and the issues that you may face when you are working on your projects together. So we know the rigidity that exists, the methodical approach to business. And so let's take a look at the meetings. How are the meetings going to be conducted? As we know, people approach meetings in very different ways. We could say that Germans generally are seen as pre-planners, and this means they like to attend meetings having done a lot of preparation. And this preparation helps them debate their point of view with conviction. So they need to plan very, very carefully. I'm sure you are not surprised about that, based on what we have just talked about concerning engineering, concerning technical attributes. Therefore, planning is essential. It's part of the education psyche. It's part of the the way they live. And so then pre-planning in meetings will come, because they want to discuss things with a sense of conviction and rightness and firmness. So this sense of conviction and a very direct way of debating sometimes can be misunderstood by other cultures. It can come across as being arrogant, or we say being pedantic, actually very, very fussy to a point about tiny, tiny subject matter. But this is just explaining the way they are. This is how they think things through. This is the best way they can approach discussion. So if you come across this, don't feel offended at all. This is just a very logical and very good and way of conducting their discussion and getting their points across with conviction and determination. In general, too, German companies tend towards developing specialists rather than generalists, and this is quite different to the other countries that we have looked at. Here, meetings are often large, and you have a designated specialist from each area involved in the matter under discussion. So you would have quite a large group of people, because each person has definite specialities that they can bring to the table. They're not generalist in terms of that. They are well, clearly defined and only have one area of specialty. People are expected to contribute to the debate when discussions touch on their particular area of expertise or specialty. But they don't have to have an opinion on everything else or anything else. So they are seen as really only there for their particular role and their specialty. Other views, it doesn't matter if they have other views, they're not really warranted. So in a meeting, direct and often strong debate is expected and encouraged, because this is believed to promote and develop the right answer. And in doing that, of course, sometimes the meetings get quite heated, just like in France or in even Australia. When you discuss things openly, there is heat in the argument. But that doesn't mean to say that it is not a good way for business to be discussed or things to be done. It is just the way it is. If you find you're in that meeting, then you can also, as I said, find common ground. Listen and view, see the behaviours. You may draw from it the good things that come out of those discussions. The culture of the people, it's just a reflection of the way they have been used to doing their business. And this is who they are, just as you are who you are. So this direct and strong debate does bring about the desired results. And the Germans feel quite comfortable, I'm sure, in the way that they discuss their business matters. People from other cultures whose communication style is more diplomatic than direct can often misinterpret these discussions as perhaps confrontational and very deliberate and very hard and distant. And that is something that you should not focus on too unduly. It is just the way people wish to discuss things. You know yourself sometimes when you're having a discussion with your Vietnamese counterpart, you may have a very, very heated debate, very, very animated conversation, and at the end of it you come out with a good result. That can happen, and in most cases one hopes that that does happen. It's the same. Your German counterparts, this is how they discuss, this is how they work, and when you're with them at those meetings, don't be too offended if it comes across in a very strong way. It is just how business is done. So meeting your German counterparts can be quite an extraordinary experience because they want to get to the heart of the matter. They are very dedicated to getting results. So we've gone through the business structures, the management styles, meeting styles, and now let's take a look at how your German counterparts work in teams. Teamwork in Germany. How could we best sum that up? We know about teamwork in France, Australia, the US, and the UK. What about teamwork in Germany? Based on the fact that they view themselves as specialists, I would think that teamwork in Germany could be best described as a group of individuals working to a specific leader towards a recognizable goal. Everybody in the team is a specialist and an individual. And that, in some ways, that is how many other cultures undertake their teamwork. However, with Germany, within the team, each member has a very well-defined role, which is adhered to. And here the difference is, the lines don't tend to be crossed here, as this could promote confusion. So people are set in their ways. Their role is set and they cannot really wander from that role. This is where it's very specific and very methodical. And if we look back at the way their education has been and how businesses are structured, this is also a very methodical way to doing teamwork. Cross-departmental teams would also be very difficult to manage, as people are asked to make decisions which might sometimes affect their area of hierarchy. So this is a very difficult thing for them to be flexible. As we mentioned before, it comes across that sometimes the way people work and the way definitely that managers work is a little bit inflexible. They like to follow the methodical patterns. Team members like to report back to their superiors, their direct superiors. They don't really like to wander from one place to the next. They see the way things are done, the reporting is up that way, and that is what they do. So therefore, you don't find a lot of cross-departmental teams being managed very easily, because it creates confusion, it creates the sense of loyalty or the sense of frustration within those teams may be endangered. People prefer to work in their set roles, in their set teams, with their set tasks. This is where the inflexibility comes into it, and following the very strict patterns and rigid hierarchy comes into play as well. Communicating with your German counterparts. What do you think? I think you would agree that very much here, the communication style from what we've just gone through, that directness is very important, straight to the point, very clear, precise communication. And also another thing that's very important is the truth. That fact is very important, that there's no ambiguity allowed whatsoever in German communication. Preciseness is the essential part of communication. So with preciseness comes the truth of the fact and the directness before any kind of diplomacy. Germans believe that personal emotion should not deflect the truth from being spoken. Truth is the utmost, the ultimate, and nothing can stop the truth from being spoken. Even if personal emotions come into it, etc., it must be there. So this directness can sometimes be misinterpreted as being rudeness. For example, the UK, very diplomatic culture, will consider the German outspokenness or directness as being perhaps quite rude. And indeed, Japanese and Korean business people will also consider the same. However, it should be said that direct speaking is seen in Germany as a sign of respect. And it is a fundamental thing in the search for the correct answer to a particular problem. So there's a reason why directness is required. It's there to get the solution. It's there to address a particular problem. However, the directness is sometimes quite hard and quite confrontational for, as we have just said, other cultures to be able to feel comfortable with. But it does not mean that your German counterparts are not good business people. It is just the way they handle their business. This directness in communication also shows itself a lack of self-depreciation. It seems like it's not a humble way, in other words, of speaking, and it's not soft at all, and therefore it seems to be quite arrogant. Sometimes German businessmen are labelled as being arrogant, and German business people try to change that perception of the arrogance. It's not arrogance that they are showing, it's more direct speech. So if you feel that there is arrogance, and you will know, your emotions will tell you that you think the person is arrogant, try to consider it that that person is not really arrogant, it's just that they are a result of showing direct speech, and it comes out as looking as arrogant. But that person may not be exactly arrogant in the true sense of the emotion. Here, it's important that you do try to see the other side, to see the way people are brought up, the way their culture has brought them up, as to how they reflect and show the way they conduct business. So step back and observe rather than judging and considering somebody unfairly in a negative way. Actually, Germans are very factual about their own capabilities. It's not the same as being arrogant or show-offy. They show off or are superior. They are just very factual. And sometimes being factual, as I just said, comes out as appearing arrogant. It's true to say, though, that with your German counterparts, you can generally believe what he has said. If he has said he's going to do something, he really will do something, because they are very direct and their words are very powerful, and they have a firm commitment to the truth. So you have a very strong plus with your German counterparts in the fact that they believe so deeply and are convicted and have conviction for the truth of the matter. In terms of humour, we have said, for example, with the French, we just spoke about previously, use humour carefully. Not all serious business situations can be solved with some humour. And much is made of the lack of humour of German business people. It's not true to say that Germans lack a sense of humour. That's not true. They do have a sense of humour. They have a different way of showing their humour and expressing it. And for the Germans, as they are very methodical people, as you now understand, there is a time and a place for humour. So its place is not so much during the serious business of business. So everything has its place. In serious business, there really is no place in the German way of thinking for humour. The more serious a situation is, the more seriousness is called for. So remember that very, very clearly. To open up a light-hearted conversation at a very serious point in time, in the time of your business undertaking or discussion, is not a good way to approach the situation. So it's important to remember the use of humour here in Germany. In the more family, social, perhaps light discussions, you may be able to use humour, but in serious business and very serious discussions where things are going wrong, certainly no. This is very different to the Australian way and the United Kingdom way of using humour in discussions. So remember, humour doesn't travel well to all countries. It's good to have this point in your mind. If you are a generally kind of funny person, a humorous person, and you get along well and you're very open, easygoing, you have to learn to pull back and watch yourself carefully if you are dealing in France, and now particularly as we're discussing Germany. Learn to pull back and not exaggerate the use of humour at all. It may feel natural to you, but it certainly may not feel natural or be appreciated by your German counterparts. What is funny perhaps in your culture or another culture sometimes will translate or come across as nonsense or stupidity in another. So really do try to watch that point very, very carefully. Many people ask me all the time, oh, if you're just friendly and laugh and have a joke, everything will be okay. They say that to me when they're doing business. But there is caution to be had here. Of course, your positive professional behavior is important to exhibit, but humour is something you must treat carefully and regard it highly when you're dealing with different cultures. You don't want to come away looking like an idiot and having your German counterparts think that you are not very technically capable or not capable at all because you use humour in the wrong way. That would be a real pity. So let's take a look at women in business. Although more and more women are making inroads into more senior positions in German companies, it does appear that Germany is behind many other European companies in its progress in developing women's positions in business and promoting women to higher positions. The thinking of engineers in senior positions, it's almost a preoccupation of engineers being in senior positions in German companies, and the traditional lack of women studying these disciplines has possibly added to this lack of progress. This is the case. Women have never really been great engineers or predominantly in engineering in Germany, and therefore, as the decades have passed, the more senior positions have gone to men in general because of the fact that they have been predominantly in engineering or technical disciplines. But things are changing, and there are indeed many, many, many professional women now climbing up the ladders of management and being involved in senior roles in major companies and organisations, and indeed government in Germany. So things are changing, and Germany is riding that wave of change. The wave of change from its non-interest or non-involvement in human management and people management skills, that is changing. And also the role of women in business is changing as well. You can imagine the Germans and the way they're thinking, their preciseness, their clarity, their methodical order of things. And so, dress code-wise, if you are travelling to Germany, on the whole, Germans dress very, very smartly. And for business, they do not restrict themselves to dark suits or grey suits, but it's common that they actually wear jackets or sports jackets and sports trousers, etc., with a shirt and tie in business. They are a little bit unconventional in that way compared to the UK or US, etc. So it's common to see more unconventional but suited dressing for business situations. People wear smart, casual clothes, and trousers for women are very much a commonplace. Trousers for women in many countries now are commonplace. In some of the more IT-based industries, then dress is more casual, jeans being very acceptable, as I have said, for other countries, and anybody in IT now, jeans and T-shirts, that's the name of the game, with very smart sneakers or whatever. But dress code basically in Germany for business is smart, casual, smart suit and smart casual. So before you're going to be meeting your partners or new business people you've never met before, try to make sure that you adhere or observe some of the dress codes. Of course, underneath it all, people don't really mind how people dress. You are who you are. You are an individual. But I do want to say here that it is important sometimes to follow a little bit of protocol. It means that you've shown that you're professional, and it also helps you in your own mind if you dress appropriately and you dress accordingly as everybody else is dressed, then you don't feel like you're the odd person out. So it gives you that little bit of added confidence and added strength, and you know that you've done the right thing. This is quite important in business dealings, particularly where you want to make a very good impression for the first time that you're meeting. So let's summarize what we've gone through, taking you through some tips that you can remember and you can look at as you prepare to meet your German counterparts or continue to meet your German counterparts. Tip number 1. Germans are not happy with ambiguity or uncertainty. They like preciseness, they like clarity, and they like to analyze problems in a great depth. That's why they have very discussions with great conviction. They like to discuss before they reach a conclusion because they feel if they make a mistake on the conclusion, then that's a waste of time. So sometimes they are uncomfortable with feelings or hunches in a business setting. So preciseness, factual statements are very much the way that they base their decisions and deal in business. Feelings and hunches sometimes do not go well when they're discussing matters. Tip number 2. Long-term planning is absolutely essential. It's expected and respected, all right? And that will help shape the future. If you show that you can be involved in very good long-term planning, then you are on a good track with your partner or your counterparts. They will respect that and work with you very well. It's very important for them. They understand the benefits that come from that. Tip number 3. Education is highly prized. Again, like the French, education qualifications is highly prized, and particularly when we're talking about technical expertise. So the greatest amount of respect will go to someone who has great depth of technical knowledge. Now, you and I know sometimes that may not mean that they are the best managers in the world. However, in Germany, and when you're meeting your counterparts, they will, first of all, they will notice your qualifications and your technical expertise. Things are changing, as we say, but still, education is highly prized, so please remember that point. Indeed, in Vietnam as well, educational qualifications are highly regarded. So in some ways, you're on the same wavelength as your German counterparts. Tip number 4. Once decisions have been made, then it is expected that these decisions are carried out without question. This is very important, regardless of whether there is any follow-up disagreement or not with the original decision. So this is the hierarchical, rigid, methodical approach to business. And this is where it's very directive and the orders come down from the boss. The power is there, makes the decisions. So be very mindful of that. They are expected to be carried out. You should have discussed them prior to the main meeting, prior to all of the conclusions being made, because after the meeting's made, there's no turning back in many respects. Tip number 5. The boss is expected to know what he's talking about and give clear leadership. That's why you're there. There's a strong respect for authority in Germany, and subordinates will very rarely contradict the boss in public. Okay, they will not say things in front of anybody else to contradict the boss. So this is very much authoritarian in terms of the way management runs and the way the boss leads his team. If you want to discuss things, as we said, do it outside of this main discussion, never in front of others. Tip number 6. Outbursts of emotion, because the Germans are very clear and precise and everything has its purpose. Outbursts of emotions in the workplace are seen as signs of weakness and lack of professionalism. So any anger or frustrations need to be very carefully controlled. This is where you do need to be able to discuss privately or in other subject times your differences of opinions. If you have a temper that you lose quite frequently and easily and have impulsive outbursts, then this will not be regarded very highly. So outbursts of emotions are a no-no. Tip number 7. Instructions are meant to be carried out without question and without interference or supervision. Now this is interesting because you are meant to know your job. You are meant to be the technical expert. You are meant to have qualifications. So this is quite different to a coaching atmosphere if you have been involved in coaching or guiding your staff in the past in your management style. So notice that when you're working with your German teams, that if you or your team are faltering or need any guidance, you'll have to be very careful about that. Your team must know their job. They must know every aspect of the role they have to play. And it is your responsibility to ensure that that does happen and that they get up to speed before they take on the tasks under your German counterpart. So this is a very important thing. Delegation is done, but the person who is delegated to has to be an expert, without question. Tip number 8. There is a certain formality about relationships between bosses and subordinates, based on the culture, based on the way business is done, and how things flow. And so therefore relationships with bosses and subordinates are a little bit formal, using perhaps surnames as well in certain instances. So there is that formality attached to that. Be mindful of that when you're dealing with your German team counterparts. Tip number 10. Here we remember the German companies are compartmentalized, meaning things are in boxes, things are in departments, things are in a hierarchy, and every department has a power base. Information must go through the right channels. You cannot sidestep. You cannot go around anybody to do things. There's strict protocol and flow of order, and that is respected, and it is expected that you follow those protocols very, very carefully. If you don't, you will end up with some discussion or some obstacle or some argument about the fact that you have done that, because they are very direct in telling you what they think. Anyway, follow the protocol, and it's quite fine. Find that common ground, follow the protocol. And also let your German counterpart know your protocol of things and find the common ground. As I always say, look for it. You will find it how you can work well together. Tip number 11. Remember, going across hierarchical lines and managing teams across these lines will be very difficult to arrange, because it interferes with the normal structures and rules. And the mindset is very much geared to the normal structures and rules. So flexibility is quite a rare thing. Be mindful when you do need to go across the hierarchical lines. It will be difficult, so be prepared for that and try to consult and work a solution to that. Tip number 12. Meetings tend to be formal, and if you want to find out what people are thinking, you do it in an informal one-to-one meeting, boss and you together in a small meeting, not in a formal meeting situation. So the idea is be open, be alert, find out when you can talk to somebody separately before you have a major formal meeting. That's how to get things done. Tip 13. Your German counterparts will be very well prepared with all facts and figures, very clear facts, figures, precise facts and figures. And If they come to a meeting without any firm opinion, that would be quite unusual. So they are coming prepared and ready. They're not coming there to think and decide ideas then. They're coming there prepared with the ideas. And that is how you should also go to your meetings as well. Your German side, the Vietnamese side, you must be prepared. Just as they will be, you have to be as well. Then you can have your discussion. Tip number 14. The truth is very important, as we said, and compromise is seen as a weakness or uncertainty. When there is argument and debate, then the truth must come out regardless. So that is the aim of every argument or debate, to have the truth. And it will be debated very highly until the truth appears. There's no middle ground between two conflicting ideas. It will be one thing or the other. It will be the truth or not. And that is how your German counterparts will proceed with a lot of their discussion. Tip 15. If you have no knowledge or particular knowledge or expertise on a subject, when you are dealing with your German counterparts, it's best to say nothing, because otherwise you will show that you have no ability. This comes from the education system and from the whole cultural thing of having technical ability, and that education is revered. So best to say nothing or comment nothing on a topic only if you have good knowledge on that topic. Actually, this is a very good rule to follow in any situation with any culture. Unless you can use what you have as a bluffing technique in your negotiations. But generally, unless you know what you're talking about, don't really make any comments. You'll end up in hot water. You'll be found out and you'll look ridiculous. And particularly with your German counterparts. Tip 16. Information is generally top-down on a need-to-know basis. A lot of information is not shared. There's not a lot of talking going on and dissemination of information unless you need to know. This is the German way of doing things. And it's expected that superiors are better informed than others. So if you are a manager or if you are dealing with managers or your German counterparts look at you as the project leader, they expect you to have all the information. You should be better informed than your superiors. So just use that as a general rule. You have to be up to speed with your knowledge. Tip 17. Everything must be put in writing. Preciseness and clarity is very important, and in German business, the writing of everything in detail and thoroughly and correctly is absolutely essential. Of course it is in many other cultures. However, the German psyche or mentality about the written word is absolutely essential and important. So therefore you need to make sure everything is correct, as you would with French, as you would with most other cultures. But reliance is heavy on the written minutes of a meeting, written contracts, written everything, written contact reports. This is very, very important to record everything. Tip number 18, as we discussed, be careful of the humour. If you want to crack a joke, be careful of the people that you're talking to. Be mindful of who they are. With Australians, fine, you have no problem, or people from the UK. But with Germany, it is particularly a tender area. You should certainly avoid it in important business decisions, important business situations. And generally, it's not really the norm at work. When socializing, you will find that they are very happy to have a joke and laugh, just like you, just like me. However, business is business. That's the general rule to follow. Tip number 19. Punctuality is important. Don't be guilty of stealing time. It says here, always being on time, being earlier than usual. Punctuality is very important, more so than in many other cultures. So be mindful of that with your meeting times, and indeed when you're meeting people for dinner or whatever. Just remember, time is essentially important too. Tip number 20, our final tip. It may appear that Germans are quite formal, extremely formal in some ways, even amongst themselves. But this formality is really just a sign of respect, and they will use pronouns and titles to say hello to each other, even with people they may have known for many, many years. So it is just the nature of the language, it is just the nature of the culture. And it's meant to make people feel comfortable, indeed, within their own cultural system. So please don't be concerned about that. It's just the way people are. And indeed, you will find that when you're speaking with your German counterparts, you will get to understand them. And through the communication process, you will pick up on some of the ways that they speak to each other. And indeed, you can feel quite warm, I'm sure, and they will include you in the way that they refer to you as well. So finally, we're going to take a look at entertaining as we finally look at all of the countries we have dealt with: Australia, America, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany now. When you're entertaining your German counterparts, how do you go with that? Now, as we have said, Germans tend to make quite strong separation between work and their private life. Work is work, private life is private life. So it is a little bit unusual to be taken out to dinner, and actually it's even rarer if you are invited to somebody's home. That is actually quite an honour if you are invited to someone's home, but it's not very normal. So most business entertaining is done over lunch. It's the same with France. Most business entertaining is done over lunch. And it can be either in a restaurant or sometimes in the boardrooms or the company's facilities. It could be a cafeteria or the restaurant in the factory complex or whatever. So it's not unknown to talk about business during the meal, and it's probably a good idea to try to introduce a few softer subjects during the business conversation. Break it up. Don't just blitz it totally on business. Everything's business, business, business. Try to soften it up. Sporting, sometimes talking about sport or who won the local match or who won the soccer match, those sorts of subjects are very good to talk about. Germans do love their football as well. So you can relax a little bit and break it up. Don't be so focused on business the whole time. And if you are invited out for a meal, the host will always pay. As in most countries, the host will pay. And if you invite someone for a business lunch, you will be expected to pick up the bill too. Make no bones about that. Be very, very prepared for that, no matter where it is and no matter how much the bill. In Germany, when people are a little bit of culinary advice here, in Germany, the knife is used throughout the meal. It's the same in Australia and in the UK as well. In the US, it's different, where Americans tend to just cut with a knife and put it down. But eating with only one hand or with one hand placed on your lap is not considered good table etiquette for the Germans or by the Germans. So it's considered that you should use your knife and have your knife in your hand at all times. Don't put it down and just eat with one hand like this. Just a little bit of etiquette for you when you're travelling in Germany. Even though alcohol may be offered at a business lunch, many Germans will refrain from drinking during the day. So if your host doesn't drink, then don't drink. If your host does drink, then that's fine. You can have a drink too. You just follow their lead. Actually, that's a very good general rule to follow in most cultures. But it's important, particularly for the Germans, because they are quite precise. So remember that they have this preciseness about them. And if you follow their lead, then you won't end up in trouble. Leaving a tip, usually 10% at the end of the meal, is the normal go. I certainly hope you've been able to pick up here on some important tips and important background on doing business with your German counterparts. As I said, people are people. We are who we are. We have different clothes that we wear over the individual that we are. And we don't mean to offend people. People are generally have good intentions towards others when they have a meeting or they're conducting business. Mostly that is the case. If things are a bit awkward between two different cultures, then it's up to you to find the common ground. And I will come back to this every time. This is your responsibility. Once you have begun to understand through the programs that we have gone through in doing negotiations across cultures, in conducting business between different countries, in looking at contracts and how different people view contracts internationally. Once you have gone through these subjects and gained a basic knowledge and understanding of what goes and what makes people think from different cultures, then you will be able to progress further. You will be able to build your business and progress further with any of the contracts you have undertaken with your various counterparts in different countries. A lot of this is about just having the knowledge and the awareness of whom you are dealing with, and then using your own brand of who you are to be able to find common ground and progress together in a very cohesive and harmonious manner. Of course, there are going to be difficulties along the way. That's going to happen in any situation, and it happens with businesses within your own country, Vietnamese to Vietnamese. So be on the lookout. Be aware. Once you are aware of who you are and the way you conduct yourself internationally, and once you are aware of your counterparts and how they think and feel and view things and what's caused them to behave the way they do, then once you are aware of all these things, I am sure that you will be able to move your business forward and have very rewarding relationships with all of your partners and your counterparts from various countries around the world. Thank you for listening, and I do hope that you will continue to follow us with our communications program in the future. Thank you and goodbye.